Alright, so my topic today is about children in foster care and adoption. According to the Children's Rights website, over 680,000 children have spent some time in the foster care system in the year 2016. Children who have grown up in harsh environments are often the ones that are put in these situations. So children in lower class city, that kind of stuff, often they're children of color who end up in these situations in the foster care system. My goal today, as I'm talking to you about this topic, is to persuade you to become in some way involved with children in foster care, because a lot of them do not have stable adults in their life, do not have love or care. Even though there are adults, there's social worker and that kind of stuff, they often do not have a stable adult who is there all the time, who is looking out for them. That is my goal today. Last year, I went to visit my sister in Arizona. She goes to school there. And during one of her chapel times, she had a guest speaker named Beth Gutenberger. And she was a very powerful speaker. She spoke on her being involved with orphanages down in Mexico. And her husband had a very wonderful story about how they felt like they were led there and that they should be there, and they've adopted a number of students. But one of the examples that she gave about what it's like to be an orphan, and this is most children in foster care, they were taking their families or their parents have died, is their heart. And this piece of paper represents their heart. Now, when a child loses their parents for the first time, whether they're a baby or they're 10 years old, there's a tear in their heart. Every time that they are moved from one living situation to another, there is another tear. And this can happen multiple times to them, most of the time. Each time that they are hurt by an adult, some of them are sexually assaulted, some of them are even sexually assaulted by other children in the system, there's another tear. So as a child spends more and more time in foster care, or even orphanages around the world, their heart gets smaller and smaller. And it is extremely hard to put it back together. But there are some ways that you can help be a part of that. Before I give that example of what things that you can do, there's a couple of things to be aware of. When you're dealing with children who have been in foster care, they often deal with a lot of disorders that come along with them. OHEL's website states that many children that through the foster care system deal with things like PTSD. They deal with ADHD, ADD, those kinds of disorders where they're too overly stimulated, or there's just something going on, it's too much. Post-traumatic stress syndrome is huge, and it's things that our soldiers deal with when they're in the middle of war. Small children are dealing with this because they are put in terrible situations sometimes where they cannot deal with or function well in it. There's also social stigmas that most children deal with, especially teenagers, I feel like, that they deal with being looked down upon because sometimes their parents are drug addicts, sometimes their parents are alcoholics, sometimes their parents are just terrible people in general is why they've gotten taken away. That's not the case for every foster care child. Some of it, like I was saying earlier, their parents just have died, and they didn't have other family to take care of them. There's a lot of stuff involved with the reasons why children go into foster care, but most people just make assumptions as why they're in there and kind of what kind of child they are, what kind of teenager they are. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's a number of ways you can help be a part and actually build up foster care kids and kind of help them transition well into their adult years. One of them is doing foster care. You have the opportunity, if you apply for it and you do some training, to take in children who are dealing with these situations. Now, doing foster care is kind of more of a transitional bit. You will not usually keep the child that you foster care for super long, unfortunately. But one of the things you can do, and as long as kind of the stars align sometimes, unfortunately, you can adopt children through going through foster care, which in a lot of ways is a lot better than just doing foster care, because you're pouring into this child or teenager's life who has never had stability, giving them stability. You are signing up for a lot of stuff. Like I mentioned earlier, a number of these children deal with a lot of disorders, and you need to be ready and prepared for those things that might be coming your way. But it is well worth it to be a part of a child's life and being a parent to the child that does not have parents. Another way that you can help out is mentoring foster kids. There is plenty of places mostly here in Washington and other places where you can mentor foster care kids. You can go to like a center, that kind of thing, or there are ministries that focus specifically on foster care, and that they bring students in and they like make them lunch or do those kinds of different things. But just having adults in your life that are consistent and want to pour into them is extremely important. And finally, one of the major ways, and probably the easiest way you can help, is by donating. One of the opportunities that the website I looked at gave was donating prom dresses for teenage girls who are not able to obviously afford that because they're in the foster care system. Just by donating these prom dresses, you gave these girls this opportunity to feel like they actually are part of something, that they are able to be normal high school girls, which is extremely important because most of their life they have felt like they were not. And I kind of had some understanding about those feelings, about feeling on the edge. In conclusion, I'm going to share some reasons why I chose this topic and why it's so close to my heart. When I was 7 years old, my mother left me for the first time. She came in and out of my life a number of times, which honestly caused a lot of trauma for me. I have a lot of problems with being alone, with those kinds of things. Where like I felt abandoned for a really long time, and those kinds of feelings that you get. And I've also had friends who've been adopted who have gone through those different things, and I felt this connection with them because I understood, yes, my dad stayed, and yes, I had somebody that loved me, but I could still feel what it was like in some small way, where I felt like that tearing of like the paper the example that I gave you earlier. There was a tear. And the thing that helped me become the woman I am today is the adults who invested in me, especially in my later teen years, who inspired me and helped build up who I was and make me more confident. And this is super important to these children and teenagers who don't have that. They don't even have family. They don't have the opportunity like I did, where they don't have a family member that actually can do that for them. So if you can, in any way, shape, or form, I ask you, and I trying to persuade you here with this, to be involved in a foster child's life, because it's so important. They do not have the stability, and just having one adult in their life who's there constantly can change. So thank you for coming to my speech today, and have a wonderful day.